Hi guys, today we are going to find out, what if Churchill had never become Prime Minister? You're standing on Whitehall in May 1940, rain misting your collar, watching limousines glide past like black beetles. The air smells of wet wool and dread. Parliament's windows glow yellow, hiding men deciding whether Britain kneels or fights. Spoiler, without Churchill, you probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop your city and local time below. I route every one. Now, sit back and let's dive into today's alternate journey together. You feel the absence like a missing tooth. Churchill's cigar smoke, his growl, that bulldog scowl never materializing in the war cabinet. Instead, silence where defiance should roar. You glance at newspaper kiosks. Headlines whisper, "Negotiation possible?" As if peace with Hitler were a train timetable. You shiver, not from cold, but from the creeping sense history's rudder just snapped off. The corridors of power echo with Halifax's polished shoes. You imagine him sipping tea while drafting letters to Mussolini, hoping Il Duce might mediate with Berlin. You scoff, diplomacy with dictators? That's like asking a wolf to babysit lambs. Yet here you are, watching Britain choose velvet gloves over brass knuckles. You wander past Admiralty House, its flags limp in windless dread. No Churchill means no midnight memos scrawled in red ink demanding action this day. Instead, you overhear clerks murmuring about realistic outcomes and preserving the empire through compromise. You want to scream. Compromise with Nazis? That's surrender with extra steps. You pause outside Broadcasting House. No, "We shall fight on the beaches" speech crackles through the airwaves. Instead, BBC announcers soothe with updates on constructive talks and diplomatic channels. You feel the national spine softening, vertebra by vertebra. The pubs are quieter, the jokes are gone. Even the pigeons seem to walk slower. You check your watch, May 10th, 1940, the very day Hitler invades Belgium, Holland, Luxembourg. In our timeline, Churchill seizes the moment. Here? You watch Halifax hesitate, consult his notes, request another committee. You mutter, "Tick-tock, mate." History doesn't wait for tea breaks. You pass a recruitment office. Posters still say your country needs you, but the eyes of the painted soldier look uncertain now. You wonder how many lads will still sign up when the Prime Minister sounds like a headmaster negotiating with bullies. Patriotism needs a voice. Right now, Britain's is a whisper. You duck into a cinema. Newsreels show German panzers rolling through the Ardennes. No Churchillian narration to stiffen resolve, just a calm baritone explaining strategic withdrawals. You feel your own shoulders slump. Without that voice, even celluloid victories feel hollow. You buy popcorn anyway. Comfort food for a collapsing world. You eavesdrop on two civil servants sharing cigarettes. One says, "Halifax isn't weak, he's pragmatic." The other replies, "Pragmatic's just cowardice with a dictionary." You nod. You'd high-five them, but high-fives haven't been invented yet. Also, you're invisible. Silver linings? You end the day on the Thames embankment watching barges drift under bridges named for kings. You realize leadership isn't about titles, it's about tone. Without Churchill's growl, Britain's song becomes a lullaby. And lullabies don't win wars, you sigh. Tomorrow, Dunkirk, and it won't be a miracle. You wake to headlines screaming, "Halifax, peace talks underway." Your stomach knots. It's late May 1940, and instead of rallying cries, you get diplomatic cables. You picture Halifax in his study, polishing spectacles, drafting overtures to Rome. You mutter, "Mate, Mussolini's Hitler's wingman, not his marriage counselor." But no one's listening to ghosts like you. You trail Halifax through Whitehall corridors, watching him adjust his cuffs before entering cabinet. His voice, smooth as Earl Grey, suggests exploring neutral intermediaries. You want to throw a teapot. Neutral intermediaries? Sweden's neutrality is basically a fancy word for, "Please don't bomb us." You sigh. This is Britain's wartime strategy now, hoping Scandinavians can broker world peace. You peek into map room. No Churchill pacing, jabbing at Europe with a cigar. Instead, Halifax points politely at Belgium, murmuring, Perhaps if we withdraw gracefully. You groan. Gracefully? The Wehrmacht doesn't do graceful. They do blitzkrieg, boots, and burning villages. You wish you could hand him a dictionary. Under graceful, add not applicable in 1940. You eavesdrop on a War Office call. Halifax asks, could the French hold longer if we delay our advance? You facepalm, delay? The French are collapsing like a souffle in an earthquake. Without Churchill's hold-at-all-costs fury, British generals hesitate. You imagine German tanks chuckling as they roll past unopposed checkpoints. You visit a pub near Horse Guards. Soldiers huddle over pints, voices low. One whispers, heard we might negotiate terms. Another spits, terms? With who? The bloke who's bombing our mates? You nod. Even the rank-and-file no-surrender dressed as diplomacy still smells like defeat. You buy them around. Morale's currency now. And it's crashing. You watch Halifax address the Commons. No fire, no fury, just measured tones about preserving national assets and avoiding unnecessary sacrifice. You glance at MPS. Some nod. Others stare at shoes. You realize this isn't leadership. It's liquidation. Selling Britain's soul piecemeal to spare its body. Spoiler, both get sold anyway. You slip into the BBC again. Announcer's voice. The Prime Minister expresses cautious optimism regarding continental stability. You snort. Continental stability? The continent's being steamrolled. You imagine Hitler listening, chuckling into his schnitzel. Cautious optimism, Britain's new motto, right under please don't shoot us. You check wireless reports from Paris. Panic, flames, French government fleeing. No British promise of we're coming. No shared sacrifice, just silence. And Halifax's memo. Assess feasibility of separate armistice. You feel sick. Separate armistice? That's not strategy. That's divorce papers mailed mid-battle. You whisper, this isn't Britain. This is surrender in a Savile Row suit. You wander past St. Paul's. No Churchill standing defiant as bombs fall nearby. Instead, you see clerks boarding up windows, not with sandbags, but resignation. You overhear a bishop murmuring, perhaps God tests us through humility. You reply, invisible, unheard, God doesn't send panzers. Men do, and men must stop them. You end the night staring at a portrait of Halifax in a newspaper kiosk. Calm eyes, gentle smile, perfect for a garden party, terrible for a war. You realize charisma isn't fluff, it's fuel. Without it, nations stall. You tuck the paper under your arm. Tomorrow, Dunkirk. And without Churchill, there won't be boats, just beach and bullets. You stand on the dunes of Dunkirk, May 27, 1940. No Royal Navy destroyers slicing through channel swells. No fishing trawlers, no pleasure yachts, no little ships answering the call. Just you, the wind, and 300,000 British and French troops staring at the horizon, waiting for salvation that never comes. The sea is empty. So is hope. You walk among the soldiers, mud-caked, hollow-eyed, rifles slung like dead weights. One mutters, Churchill'd have sent boats. You nod. He's right. But Churchill's in political exile, writing memoirs no one reads. Instead, Halifax issued a memo. Evacuation deemed logistically improbable. Translation, you're on your own, lads. Enjoy the sand. You climb a dune for a better view. German artillery thuds in the distance. Stukas scream overhead, dropping bombs like rotten fruit. No RAF cover. Halifax redirected fighters to defend home soil. You whisper, home soil's these lads, you prat. But the wind steals your protest. History doesn't care about ghosts with good arguments. You find a radio operator hunched over static. He's trying to raise Dover. Signal cuts in and out. Repeat, we need extraction. Over. Silence. Then, stand by. Cabinet reviewing options. You want to smash the set. Options. The only option left is surrender. Or death. Or both. In that order. You pass field hospitals. Stretchers line the beach. Medics ration bandages. A surgeon barks, no morphine after Thursday. You check your invisible watch. It's Tuesday. You wince. By Friday, men will bite leather straps while bullets are dug out. War without mercy. War without Churchill means war without miracles. You overhear two corporals sharing a cigarette. Heard Halifax offered peace terms via Lisbon. One snorts. Terms? We're the terms. We're what gets traded. You feel your throat tighten. These men aren't pawns. They're sons, brothers, blokes who liked football and beer. Now they're bargaining chips in a coward's game. You watch German patrols edge closer. Binoculars glint in the sun. No British counterattack, no desperate bayonet charge. Just waiting. Waiting for orders that won't come. You mutter, "This isn't war." It's a cue for catastrophe. The corporal beside you sighs. At least the Germans are punctual. You spot a French officer burning documents, maps, codes, letters home, all ash. He catches you staring. No point letting them read our shame. You want to say something noble. Instead, you say nothing. What's noble about abandonment? About a government that chose paperwork over people? You crouch beside a private writing a letter. "Dear Mum, don't worry. They'll come for us." His hands shake. Ink smudges. You want to tell him the truth, but truth's a luxury when you're knee-deep in betrayal. So you stay silent. Ghosts don't bring comfort. Only witnesses. Night falls, no flares, no engines. Just waves, wind, and whispered prayers. You look up. No Churchillian stars promising deliverance. Just black sky, indifferent. You realize, without leadership that believes in impossible rescues don't happen. Dunkirk isn't a miracle. It's a massacre waiting to be written. You wake to the sound of German loudspeakers crackling across the dunes. Lay down your arms. You will be treated with dignity. You snort. Dignity? Tell that to the Poles, the Belgians, the Dutch. But the men around you are listening, not because they believe it, but because no one's coming to save them. Surrender starts with silence. You watch as white flags, torn shirts, handkerchiefs, medical rags, begin to flutter along the British line. No officers barking defiance, no Churchillian memo screaming, "Never surrender." Just exhaustion, hunger, the quiet clatter of rifles hitting sand. You whisper, "This is how empires die." Not with a bang, with a whimper, and a paperwork trail. You trail a captured lieutenant as he's marched inland. German guards are polite, efficient, terrifying. He mutters, "Halifax said they'd negotiate fair terms." You want to laugh? Fair terms? The Geneva Convention's about to get a rewrite, with footnotes in jackboots. You glance back at the beach. It's already being scrubbed clean. History's first draft is written by the victors, and they're using British ink. You slip into a commandeered French chateau, now German HQ. Maps cover the walls. Red pins mark British POW camps stretching from Lille to Lyon. A general chuckles, "Churchill would have made this harder." You nod. He's not wrong. But Churchill's gardening in Chartwell, and Halifax is drafting surrender protocols in triplicate. You eavesdrop on German radio intercepts. Berlin's ecstatic. British Expeditionary Force neutralized. Minimal German casualties. You feel sick. Neutralized? That's corporate speak for captured or killed. And minimal casualties? That's what happens when your enemy doesn't fight back. You mutter, "Thanks, Halifax." Hope the paperwork was worth it. You visit a makeshift POW camp in a beet field. Men huddle under tarps. No Red Cross, no parcels, just mud, hunger, and rumors. One private whispers, "Heard Churchill tried to resign in protest." You sigh. Too little, too late. Resigning doesn't stop tanks. Only speeches do. And Britain's run out of speakers. You check wireless reports in London. BBC announcer, "The Prime Minister expresses gratitude for the safe internment of our brave boys." You choke on your imaginary tea. Gratitude? For internment? That's like thanking a kidnapper for not breaking your legs. You wonder if sarcasm's been outlawed, or just replaced by delusion. You wander past Admiralty again. No frantic signals to Dover. No code breakers working triple shifts. Just clerks stamping file on folders labeled Dunkirk after action. You peek inside. Paragraph 1. Evacuation deemed non-viable. Paragraph 2. Recommend commendations for orderly surrender. You close it. Some files deserve to stay buried. You find a schoolboy's essay in a discarded satchel. Why I'm Proud to be British. You read it. Mentions courage, sacrifice, standing tall. You look at the date. June 1st, 1940. You glance at the headlines. Peace talks progressing. You fold the essay gently. Childhood ends when your leaders choose surrender over spirit. You end the day watching German engineers dismantle British artillery for scrap. No Churchill to rally factories. No keep calm and carry on. Just Halifax's latest memo. Public messaging to emphasize pragmatic resolution. You translate. Tell them losing was the smart choice. You shake your head. Smart doesn't win wars. Stubborn does. And Britain just ran out. You're back in London, June 1940. No Churchill growling over wireless. No defiant crackle of resistance. Just Halifax's calm baritone. Negotiations with Berlin progressing constructively. You glance at shop windows. No V for victory chalked on glass. Just closed until further notice. You mutter, further notice? Try forever. Optimism's been rationed. And you're fresh out. You trail Halifax to a secret meeting at Claridge's. Swiss diplomats sip sherry. German envoys, discreetly present, nod politely. Agenda: terms of armistice. You want to flip the table. Instead, you watch Halifax adjust his cufflinks and suggest mutual non-aggression pacts. You whisper, "Mate, they're already aggressive." That's why we're here. No one hears you. Ghosts don't get votes. You eavesdrop on Roosevelt's decoded cable. Deeply concerned by Britain's posture. Urgent need for leadership. You nod. FDR knows. Without Churchill's late-night whiskey-fueled calls, America's sympathy stays theoretical. Lend-Lease? Still in draft. Destroyers for bases? Shelved. You sigh. Halifax doesn't charm. He files. And dictators don't fear paperwork. You visit a pub near Fleet Street. Reporters huddle over pints, voices low. Heard we might keep the Isle of Wight. One snorts. As a consolation prize? You chuckle darkly. Surrender's being packaged like a timeshare. Act now and we'll throw in Guernsey. You buy them another round. Truth needs lubrication when your government's selling dignity wholesale. You slip into the war cabinet room. Maps show Britain shrinking. No plans for counteroffensives. Just civil defense contingencies and resource reallocation. You spot a memo. Consider symbolic retention of monarchy. You facepalm. Symbolic? The crown's not a logo. It's the last thread holding the empire together. And Halifax is measuring it for the discount bin. You check intercepted German communiques. Goering brags, Britain negotiates like a tenant begging for rent extension. You wince. Accurate. Without Churchill's roar, Britain's voice is a whisper in a hurricane. You imagine Hitler reading Halifax's latest proposal, chuckling into his mustache. Pragmatism translated, please don't bomb us too hard. You wander past Buckingham Palace. No Churchill standing beside the king, radiating resolve. Just silence and sandbags. Lots of sandbags. You overhear a footman. His Majesty asked if we still have a navy. You whisper, technically? Yes. Practically? It's docked. Morale's sunk. The footman doesn't hear, but his sigh says he knows. You find a schoolteacher erasing empire from a world map, replacing it with British Isles, autonomous region. You ask, silently, since when? She doesn't answer. Kids stare at the chalk dust like it's falling snow. You realize, surrender isn't signed in treaties. It's taught in classrooms. And Britain's curriculum just got rewritten by Berlin. You duck into a cinema. Newsreel shows Halifax shaking hands with a Swiss mediator. Caption, diplomacy in action. No footage of Dunkirk, no prisoners of war. Just handshakes and teacups. You mutter, they're editing history before it's finished. The usher shushes you. You want to say, history's already over. But you don't. Ghosts don't get refunds. You end the night on Westminster Bridge. No Churchill pacing, plodding, growling into the dark. Just fog. And silence. And the distant thud of German boots on French soil. You realize, without a voice that believes in victory, victory forgets you. You pull your coat tight. Tomorrow France falls, and no one's left to catch it. You're aboard a merchant convoy in the Atlantic, September 1940. No Churchill means no coordinated naval strategy. No hunter-killer groups. No code breakers rerouting ships around wolf packs. Just you, 50 rusty freighters, and the U-boat periscope slicing through dawn mist like a shark's fin. You whisper, "This isn't a convoy. It's a buffet." You watch the first torpedo strike. Starboard engine room. Flash. Roar. Screams swallowed by sea. No escort destroyers zigzagging to depth charge the attacker. Just silence and the creak of dying metal. You mutter, "Churchill would have armed these tubs with spit and nails if he had to." But Churchill's writing gardening columns. And Halifax, he's optimizing tea rations. You trail the U-boat commander through his periscope view. He grins. Like shooting ducks in a bathtub. You want to punch the glass, but optics don't bruise. His logbook entry, sank 7, no resistance. British Admiralty asleep. You sigh, not asleep, just politely surrendering. Ship by ship, soul by soul. You eavesdrop on a wireless distress call. "Mayday, Mayday, SS Devonian, we're hit. Taking water." Static, then silence. No rescue flotilla scrambling, no coastal command scrambling fighters. Just Halifax's latest memo. Prioritize domestic morale over maritime losses. You translate, "Let them drown quietly." It's better for the headlines. You visit the Admiralty War Room. No maps lit with frantic pins. No officers shouting coordinates. Just clerks filing loss reports in alphabetical order. One sighs. "At this rate, we'll run out of paper before U-boats run out of torpedoes." You nod. Logistics won, strategy lost, and Britain's dinner table just got emptier. You check intercepted German signals. Donitz brags, "Atlantic is our lake." British sail like lambs to slaughter. You wince. Lambs, more like abandoned toys. Without Churchill's sink the bastards fury, the Royal Navy's become a floating bureaucracy. You imagine sailors polishing decks while torpedoes close in. Priorities, eh? You slip into a Liverpool dockside pub. Sailors huddle over watery beer. "Lost me brother on the Manchester Star." Another spits. "Admiralty says avoid high-risk routes." What's low risk? Rowing, you buy them around. Morale's the only cargo still being delivered, and even that's running thin. You find a child's letter to Santa. "Please bring back Daddy's ship, and stop the fish with guns." You clutch it. War's absurdity distilled into crayon. You glance at newspaper headlines. Halifax, shipping losses within expectations. You mutter, "Expectations? Whose? The Undertaker's?" Ghosts don't cry, but you come close. You wander past a ration board. Butter, 2 ounces per week. Sugar, 8 ounces per month. Hope, out of stock. You chuckle darkly. Halifax's Britain runs on spreadsheets, not spirit. You overhear a housewife. "Heard they're turning U-boat scrap into toasters." You whisper, "At this rate, we'll be toasting surrender speeches." You end the night on a cliff overlooking the channel. No blinking signal lamps, no Morse code prayers, just black water, and the occasional distant explosion. You realize, without Churchill's obsession with the Atlantic lifeline, Britain's starving. Not just for food, for fury, for faith. And the sea doesn't care who's in charge. It just keeps swallowing ships. You're in Delhi, January 1941. No Churchill means no jewel in the crown rhetoric, no promises of post-war self-rule, just Halifax's dry cables. Maintain order, avoid provocative gestures. You watch a British officer sip gin on a veranda while Indian clerks file tax reports. Empire's not crumbling, it's evaporating from indifference. You trail Gandhi through a dusty street rally. He speaks of peaceful non-cooperation, but his eyes flicker with something new, opportunity. You whisper, "Without Churchill's stubbornness, Britain's grip loosens." A student beside you murmurs, "They need us less now." Maybe we need them less too. You nod. Empires die when subjects stop pretending to care. You eavesdrop on Viceroy Linlithgow's call to London. Nationalists growing bolder. Request permission to arrest Gandhi. Halifax replies, "Unwise." Preserve appearances. You snort. Appearances? The Rajah's curtains fraying. Without Churchill's iron will, or his theatrical loyalty, The show's losing its audience, and the actors are starting to improvise. You visit a Bombay dockyard. Crates labeled "For Britain" sit unguarded. Workers lounge in shade. Foreman shrugs, no urgency. London says, conserve resources. You mutter, conserve? They're conserving defeat. A laborer grins. Maybe we ship air next. You laugh. Dark humor's the last tax-free export. And morale? That sailed with the last convoy. You slip into a Calcutta tea house. Students debate, join the British war, or wait for their collapse. One argues, if they won't fight Hitler, why die for them? You want to applaud. Instead, you sip chai. Quiet rebellion tastes like cardamom and inevitability. Without Churchill's speeches, loyalty's just a habit, and habits break. You check intercepted Congress Party memos. British vulnerability unprecedented. Accelerate civil disobedience. You nod. Halifax's diplomacy didn't just fail Europe, it signaled weakness to the colonies. You imagine Churchill roaring, traitors, but Churchill's pruning roses. And Halifax, he's drafting a memo titled Reassessing Imperial Administrative Efficiency. You wander past a recruiting office. Poster, serve the crown. But the ink's faded. Queue, empty. Recruiter naps at desk. You peek at his ledger. Last enlistment, 3 weeks ago. You sigh. Empires run on volunteers, or coercion. Without inspiration, you get neither. Just clerks stamping deferred on dreams. You find a child's schoolbook. Page titled, The Glorious Empire. Next page, doodles of tanks with bye-bye scribbled underneath. You smile sadly. History's being rewritten by 10-year-olds with crayons. You overhear a teacher focus on mathematics. Less controversial subjects. Translation: don't mention who's losing the war. You trail a British diplomat to a princely state. He offers continued protection in exchange for grain shipments. The Maharaja smiles, sips tea. And if we prefer Tokyo's offer? The diplomat pales. You chuckle. Without Churchill's growl, Britain's promises sound like IOUs from a bankrupt uncle. And everyone stopped cashing them. You end the night watching stars over the Ganges. No Churchillian broadcast crackling through wireless. No fight them on the beaches echoing in bazaars. Just crickets and silence. You realize empires don't fall from invasion. They dissolve when no one believes in them anymore. And belief? That left with Churchill. You're in London, September 1940. The Blitz's opening night. No Churchill striding through rubble, cigar clenched, growling, "We can take it." Just Halifax issuing a memo. Minimize public alarm. Emphasize resilience through quiet endurance. You mutter, quiet endurance? That's what you call surrender with better posture. You watch the first bombs fall on the East End. Fire blooms like hellish flowers. No air raid sirens wailing with Churchillian urgency. Just BBC announcers murmuring, please remain calm. Damage is localized. You want to scream. Localized? The whole city's becoming a crater, but calm's the new national anthem. Sung flat, in minor key. You trail a warden through shattered streets. He's supposed to be directing rescue, but he's filling out Form B7. Structural collapse, non-essential district. You grab his sleeve, metaphysically. People are under that rubble, he sighs. Orders say prioritize government zones. You whisper, since when is survival bureaucratic? He doesn't hear. Paperwork's louder than screams. You eavesdrop on a cabinet call. Halifax. Avoid retaliatory rhetoric. It inflames tensions. You facepalm. Tensions? The Luftwaffe's dropping high explosives on kindergartens. Retaliation's not rhetoric, it's survival. But survival's been outsourced to clerks with rubber stamps, and their ink's running faster than the fire brigades. You visit a tube station turned shelter. Families huddle on platforms. No Churchillian speeches crackling from wireless, just a recorded message. Your government thanks you for your patience. You snort. Patience. They're sleeping on concrete while their homes burn. You want to hand out medals. For endurance. For irony. For not rioting. You slip into broadcasting house. Producer's notes. Tone, reassuring. Avoid dramatics. No references to enemy. Use continental forces. You mutter, continental forces? That's what you call a waiter who brings the wrong wine. But no one's drinking, except Halifax, probably, with a napkin on his lap. You find a child's drawing taped to a boarded-up shop. Daddy says Churchill would have bombed them back. You clutch it. Innocence sees truth adults file away. You glance at the headline, Halifax seeking diplomatic de-escalation. You whisper, escalation's already here, mate. It's wearing a swastika and dropping fire. You wander past St. Paul's. No iconic photo of it standing defiant. Just scaffolding and a sign, closed for repairs. Reopening TBD. You overhear a fireman. Archbishop asked if we still believe in miracles. You reply, silently, miracles need believers, and Britons run out. The fireman doesn't hear, but his soot-streaked sigh says he knows. You check intercepted German signals. Goebbels gloats. British morale brittle as stale biscuit. No Churchill to glue it together. You wince. Accurate. Without that bulldog bark, Britain's spirit's just polite disappointment. You imagine Hitler watching newsreels of orderly queues for ration cards. They're surrendering, standing up, he chuckles. You end the night on a rooftop, watching flames paint the sky. No Churchill beside you, muttering poetry into the smoke. Just silence and the thud of falling masonry. You realize, cities don't die from bombs, they die from resignation. And London? It's learning to bow, quietly, efficiently, like a butler serving defeat on a silver tray. You're in Moscow, December 1940. No Churchill means no back-channel cables to Stalin. No shared whiskey-soaked promises of unbreakable alliance. Just Halifax's formal note. His Majesty's government remains open to dialogue. Stalin reads it, laughs, tosses it in the stove. Dialogue? I need tanks, not dinner invitations. You trail Molotov through the Kremlin. He mutters, British won't fight. Why should we trust them? You nod. Without Churchill's theatrical loyalty, or his stubborn refusal to surrender, Britain looks like a sinking ship. And Stalin doesn't rescue drowning men. He loots their pockets. You whisper, smart, but lonely. You eavesdrop on Soviet intelligence reports. British morale low, leadership indecisive, recommend delaying material commitments. You sigh. No lend-lease. No Arctic convoys, just Soviet generals sharpening pencils and suspicions. You imagine Churchill roaring, we'll send you spit and nails if we have to. But Churchill's pruning roses, again. You visit a Red Army barracks. Soldiers grumble over thin soup. Heard the British offered peace to Hitler. One spits. Then let them share his boot. You don't blame them. Without Churchill's growl, Britain's not an ally. It's a cautionary tale, and caution doesn't win wars, it just delays funerals. You slip into Stalin's study, map of Europe. Red pins mark German divisions, no British pins, just a sticky note. Wait, let them bleed each other. You mutter, classic Stalin. But without Churchill's insistence on Europe first, Stalin's playing chess alone, and Hitler's winning, because no one's teaming up to stop him. You check intercepted cables. FDR to Halifax. Urgent need for Anglo-Soviet coordination. Halifax replies, premature. Domestic stability paramount. You facepalm. Premature? The Wehrmacht's sharpening its knives for Operation Barbarossa, but Halifax is optimizing tea rations. Again. You whisper, history's burning, and he's filing the smoke. You wander past Gorky Park. No British propaganda posters, no shoulder-to-shoulder slogans, just snow and silence, and the occasional loudspeaker. Workers, exceed your quotas. The motherland thanks you. You mutter, thanks? Try needs you, because no one else is coming. Ghosts don't bring reinforcements. You find a Soviet schoolboy's essay, Why Capitalists Will Lose. You read it, mentions weak leadership and bourgeois hesitation. You glance at the date, January 1941. You sigh. Kids are being taught Britain's a lesson in failure. And they're not wrong. Without Churchill, Britain's not a beacon. It's a broken lighthouse. You trail a British diplomat to a Moscow reception. He offers continued friendship. Soviet minister smiles, sips vodka. Friendship? Define it. The diplomat stammers. You chuckle. Without Churchill's charisma or his cigars, diplomacy's just empty glasses and colder handshakes. And Stalin? He prefers warm tanks to warm words. You end the night watching snowfall on Red Square. No Churchillian cables crackling through wireless. No promises of "we shall never surrender." Just wind and waiting. You realize, without a voice that believes in alliances, alliances forget you. And Stalin? He's already drafting Plan B with a red pen. And no British input. You're in Cairo, February 1941. No Churchill means no push them back into the sea orders. No Montgomery swaggering in with tea and defiance. Just General Wavell reading Halifax's latest. Avoid overextension. Conserve materiel. You mutter, conserve? The desert's conserving our corpses and Rommel's already laughing into his schnitzel. You trail a British tank commander through the dunes. He squints at a map. Orders say hold position. You point metaphysically at Tobruk. That's where Rommel's heading. He sighs. Can't attack without authorization. You facepalm. Authorization? War's not a bloody committee meeting. But without Churchill's action this day, it's become one. You eavesdrop on a wireless intercept. Rommel to Berlin, British hesitant, like shooting fish in a very dry barrel. You wince. Dry barrel, accurate. Without Churchill's obsession with North Africa as the soft underbelly, Britain's playing defense with sand in its boots. And Rommel? He's dancing through the gaps. You visit a field hospital. Medics ration morphine. A surgeon barks, no offensive means no prisoners, means no wounded, just dead. You nod. Logistics without vision is just slow suicide. You overhear a nurse, heard Churchill offered to come out and lead them himself. You whisper, too late, love. He's weeding petunias. You slip into GHQ Cairo. No maps lit with frantic arrows. No officers shouting Monty's on his way. Just clerks filing tactical withdrawal reports. One sighs. At this rate, we'll surrender by tea time. You chuckle darkly. Tea time's sacred. Surrender's just another agenda item. You wonder if they'll serve scones. You check intercepted Italian signals. Mussolini brags, British retreat like tourists leaving a sandcastle. You snort. Tourists? More like clerks clocking out early. Without Churchill's fury, the Eighth Army's become a polite cue for defeat. You imagine Rommel sipping espresso, checking his watch. Any day now, boys. You wander past a recruiting poster. Join the Desert Rats. But the ink's faded. The queue? Empty. Recruiter naps under a palm tree. You peek at his ledger. Last enlistment 6 weeks ago. You sigh. Armies run on volunteers or fear. Without inspiration, you get neither. Just sand and silence. And Rommel's tanks. You find a soldier's letter home. Dear Mum, don't worry. They say we're trading space for time. You clutch it. Space? The desert's got plenty. Time? Rommel's stealing it. You glance at the horizon. No dust clouds of British reinforcements. Just heat haze. And the occasional distant engine. German, of course. You trail a diplomat to a Cairo hotel. He offers continued cooperation to free French officers. They smile, sip mint tea. Cooperation, define it. The diplomat stammers. You chuckle. Without Churchill's charisma or his cigars, diplomacy's just empty glasses and colder promises. And de Gaulle? He's already eyeing London's vacancy sign. You end the night watching stars over the pyramids. No Churchillian cables crackling through wireless. No never surrender echoing in the dunes. Just crickets and silence and the occasional distant explosion. You realize, without a voice that believes in victory, victory forgets you. And the desert? It swallows the forgotten whole. You're in Rome, July 1941. No Churchill means no soft underbelly obsession. No SOE agents blowing up aqueducts. No whispered promises to Italian dissidents. Just Halifax's memo. Avoid provocative escalation. Mussolini reads it, chuckles into his espresso. Provocative? I'll show them provocative. And he does. With more troops, more tanks, more swagger. You trail a fascist official through Palazzo Venezia. He's drafting a victory speech. Axis solidarity unbroken. You mutter, solidarity? More like Stockholm Syndrome. Without Churchill's relentless pressure, or his theatrical disdain, Italy's not wavering. It's doubling down. And Mussolini? He's finally feeling like the big man in the room. You eavesdrop on intercepted Vatican cables. Pope Pius XII. British posture invites prolonged conflict. Recommend discreet mediation. You sigh. Mediation. With Hitler, that's like asking an arsonist to babysit your fireworks. But without Churchill's growl, Britain's not a lion. It's a lamb asking for lighter fluid. You visit a Roman cafe. Locals debate. Will Britain surrender before winter? One shrugs. Halifax sounds reasonable. You snort. Reasonable? In war? That's like bringing a spreadsheet to a knife fight. You buy them espresso. Truth needs caffeine when your enemy's rewriting the dictionary. You slip into Mussolini's study. Map of North Africa. Red pins mark Rommel's advances. No British counteroffensives, just a sticky note. Exploit British hesitation. You mutter, classic Il Duce. But without Churchill's fury, hesitation's Britain's default setting. And Mussolini? He's turning it into a national holiday. You check intercepted British cables. FDR to Halifax. Urgent need to destabilize Mussolini. Halifax replies, counterproductive. Preserve diplomatic channels. You facepalm. Diplomatic channels. Mussolini's channel is called March on Everything, and he's got the volume cranked. You whisper, history's burning. And he's sending thank you notes. You wander past the Colosseum. No British propaganda posters. No, your deuce is failing you graffiti. Just tourists. And pigeons. And the occasional loudspeaker, workers, exceed your quotas. The empire thanks you. You mutter, thanks? Try needs you. Because no one else is coming. Ghosts don't bring revolutions. You find a schoolboy's essay, Why the Axis Will Win. You read it. Mentions British weakness and fascist efficiency. You glance at the date, August 1941. You sigh. Kids are being taught Britain's a museum exhibit. And they're not wrong. Without Churchill, Britain's not a threat. It's a footnote. In Mussolini's memoir, you trail a British diplomat to a Roman reception. He offers continued dialogue. Italian minister smiles, sips wine. Dialogue? Define it. The diplomat stammers. You chuckle. Without Churchill's charisma or his cigars, diplomacy's just empty glasses and colder handshakes. And Mussolini? He prefers warm victories to warm words. You end the night watching stars over the Tiber. No Churchillian cables crackling through wireless. No, we shall never surrender echoing in piazzas. Just crickets and silence. And the occasional distant cheer for Mussolini's latest parade. You realize, without a voice that believes in defiance, defiance forgets you. And Rome, it's already writing the victory speech. You're in Washington, June 1942. No Churchill means no late-night whiskey diplomacy with FDR. No shared cigars, no growled promises of Europe first. Just Halifax's formal note. His Majesty's government welcomes continued cooperation. Roosevelt reads it, sighs, hands it to Hopkins. Cooperation? I need a partner, not a polite bystander. You trail FDR through the Oval Office. He mutters, without Churchill, who rallies the damn public? You nod. Churchill didn't just advise, he performed. Without his radio growl, America's war fever's a slow simmer. And Hitler? He's boiling the pot. You whisper, mate, you need a bulldog. Not a butler. You eavesdrop on War Department cables. Marshal, British unwilling to commit to major offensive. Recommend delaying Overlord. You wince. Delaying? The Wehrmacht's not waiting. Without Churchill's action this day fury, D-Day's becoming D-maybe. And maybe doesn't land on beaches. It drowns in committees. You visit a USO canteen. Soldiers dance with girls, grinning. One whispers, heard we're invading France next year. Another shrugs. If the Brits ever say yes. You buy them Cokes. Morale's still sweet, but strategy's gone sour. Without Churchill's swagger, Britain's not leading, it's lagging, and America's getting impatient. You slip into a Pentagon briefing. Map of Normandy. Pins missing. General size. No British green light. No landing craft allocation. You mutter, green light? They're waiting for a traffic warden? War's not a roundabout, but without Churchill's impatience, it's become one. And Rommel's laying mines in the middle. You check intercepted British memos. Halifax. Domestic stability requires phased engagement. You facepalm. Phased engagement? That's corporate speak for we're scared. FDR's decoded reply. Phased? Try panicked. You chuckle. Even Roosevelt's losing patience. And when FDR taps his cigarette, history flinches. You wander past Times Square. No British propaganda posters. No shoulder-to-shoulder slogans. Just ads for war bonds. And a ticker. British delay invasion plans. You mutter, delay? They're not planning. They're praying. For someone else to go first, ghosts don't lead invasions. But someone should. You find a GI's letter home. Dear Ma, don't worry. They say we're going when it's optimal. You clutch it. Optimal? War's never optimal. It's messy, loud, terrifying. Without Churchill's do-it-anyway growl, optimal means never. And never means Hitler keeps Paris, and Rome, and maybe London. You trail a British diplomat to a Georgetown dinner. He offers continued consultation. American general smiles, sips bourbon. Consultation. Define it. The diplomat stammers. You chuckle. Without Churchill's charisma or his cigars, diplomacy's just empty glasses and colder handshakes. And Marshall? He's already drafting Plan B solo. You end the night watching fireworks over the Potomac. No Churchillian cables crackling through wireless. No, we shall fight them on the beaches echoing in halls of power. Just sparkles and silence. And the occasional distant train whistle, carrying troops to somewhere, someday. You realize, without a voice that believes in boldness, boldness forgets you. And the Atlantic? It's getting wider. You're on the Eastern Front, winter 1942. Oh, Churchill means no Arctic convoys, no tanks rolling off British assembly lines into Soviet ports. Just Stalin, snow, and silence. He mutters, "Where's my Lend-Lease?" You whisper, "Buried under Halifax's domestic priorities memo." The snow doesn't answer. Neither does London. You trail a Red Army commissar through Stalingrad's rubble. He kicks a frozen corpse. No British shells, no American trucks, just us. You nod. Without Churchill's insistence on Europe first, the Soviets are fighting solo. And solo means more graves, deeper snow, louder silence. You mutter, history's coldest war just got colder. You eavesdrop on Soviet radio intercepts. General to Kremlin. Request permission to fall back. Stalin's reply, not one step. We have no allies, only ice. You wince. Ice doesn't stop panzers. But without Churchill's growl and his relentless pressure on FDR, Britain's not an ally. It's a footnote in a frozen ledger. You visit a field kitchen. Soup thin as hope. A soldier mutters, "Heard Churchill offered to send us his cigars." You chuckle darkly. Cigars? They need bullets, boots, fuel, but Halifax is optimizing tea rations. Again, you buy them bread. Morale's currency now, and it's devaluing fast, faster than the ruble. You slip into a command bunker. No maps marked British support, just red pins and retreat lines. A general sighs, "We're trading space for time, but time's running out." You whisper, "And space?" It's all snow. Without Churchill's fury, the Eastern Front's become a meat grinder with no off switch. And Stalin? He's sharpening the blades. You check intercepted German signals. Goering brags, "Soviets alone, like wolves in a blizzard." You snort. Wolves? More like frozen statues. Without Churchill's alliance building or his theatrical loyalty, the USSR is not a partner. It's prey. And Hitler? He's brought extra knives. For the feast. You wander past a propaganda poster. The motherland thanks you, but the ink's faded. The queue for rations, endless. Recruiter naps in snowdrift. You peek at his ledger. Last enlistment, yesterday. You sigh. Armies run on volunteers or fear. Without inspiration, you get neither. Just frostbite and falling snow. You find a soldier's letter home in it. Dear Babushka, don't worry. They say, spring will bring help. You clutch it. Spring? The only thing spring brings is mud and more German divisions. You glance at the horizon. No dust clouds of British tanks, just white and silence, and the occasional distant artillery thud. You trail a British diplomat to a Moscow safe house. He offers continued moral support. Soviet officer smiles, sips vodka. Moral? Define it? The diplomat stammers. You chuckle. Without Churchill's charisma or his cigars, diplomacy's just empty glasses and colder promises. And Stalin? He's already drafting Plan B with a red pen. And no British ink. You end the night watching auroras over the Volga. No Churchillian cables crackling through wireless. No, we shall never surrender echoing in frozen trenches, just wind and waiting. And the occasional distant scream. You realize, without a voice that believes in alliances, alliances freeze. And the Eastern Front? It's turning into a tomb, with no flowers. You're in a New Mexico desert. August 1943. No Churchill means no British urgency injected into the Manhattan Project. No Tube Alloys team whispering breakthroughs to Oppenheimer. Just American scientists sipping coffee, muttering, maybe next year. You whisper, next year? Hitler's got a head start. And Halifax, he's filing quarterly reports. You trail a physicist through Los Alamos. He squints at equations. Without British isotope data, we're guessing. You nod. Churchill didn't just cheerlead, he accelerated. Without his bomb them first growl, the atomic race is a Sunday drive. And Germany, it's already taking the off-ramp toward Berlin with a uranium payload. You eavesdrop on a War Department cable. Groves to FDR. British contribution minimal. Recommend proceeding unilaterally. You wince. Unilaterally? That's polite for they're useless. Without Churchill's insistence on shared science or his late-night memos screaming urgency, Britain's not a partner. It's a spectator with a teacup. You visit a lab where calutrons hum. Technician sighs. Heard the Brits are still debating ethical implications. You snort. Ethical? In 1943? That's like debating napkin etiquette while your house burns. You buy them donuts. Morale's currency now, and caffeine's the new gold standard. Even geniuses need sugar to outrun Nazis. You slip into a security briefing. Map of Europe. Red pins mark suspected German labs, no British intel overlays, just a sticky note. Assume worst case. You mutter, worst case? That's when Hitler gets the bomb first. Without Churchill's paranoia or his passion, the Manhattan Projects become a polite academic seminar. With higher stakes and lower urgency, you check intercepted British memos. Halifax. Domestic opinion sensitive to weapons of mass destruction. You facepalm. Sensitive? The Luftwaffe's not sensitive, it's dropping high explosives on kindergartens. But Halifax is optimizing public messaging. Again, you whisper, history's burning, and he's drafting press releases. You wander past a recruitment poster. Scientists wanted, but the ink's faded. The queue? Empty. Recruiter naps under a cactus. You peek at his ledger. Last hire, 3 months ago. You sigh, projects run on talent, or terror. Without inspiration, you get neither. Just sand, and silence, and German progress reports. You find a researcher's letter home. Dear Mom, don't worry. They say we're close to a breakthrough. You clutch it. Close? In science, close means decades, or detonations. You glance at the horizon. No British couriers with Tube Alloys files, just tumbleweeds. And the occasional distant generator hum. American, solo, slower. You trail a British diplomat to a Santa Fe cafe. He offers continued scientific dialogue. American scientist smiles, sips coffee. Dialogue? Define it? The diplomat stammers. You chuckle. Without Churchill's charisma or his cigars, diplomacy's just empty mugs and colder equations. And Oppenheimer? He's already redacting British names from the credits. You end the night watching stars over the Jornada del Muerto. No Churchillian cables crackling through wireless. No, we must outbuild the beast echoing in labs. Just crickets and silence, and the occasional Geiger counterclick. You realize, without a voice that believes in urgency, urgency forgets you. And the bomb? It's ticking. Slower. You're in the Pacific, November 1943. No Churchill means no Germany first pressure on FDR, no shared strategy conferences. Just Halifax's polite note. His Majesty's government defers to American judgment. Roosevelt reads it, sighs. Judgment? I need a partner, not a polite passenger. And Japan? It's steering the ship now. You trail Admiral Nimitz through Pearl Harbor. He mutters, without British intel, we're fighting blind. You nod. Churchill didn't just advise, he connected. Without his share everything growl, the Pacific's become a guessing game. And Japan? It's holding all the cards. Face down, with submarines. You eavesdrop on a decoded Japanese cable. Yamamoto to Tokyo. British distraction minimal. Focus on Midway. You wince. Distraction. That's what you call a sleeping tiger. But without Churchill's roar and his relentless pressure on resources, Britain's not a threat. It's background noise. And Yamamoto? He's turning up the volume. You visit a U.S. carrier deck. Pilots prep for strike. One whispers, heard the Brits are still assessing feasibility. You snort. Feasibility? In war? That's like asking if drowning's practical while you're sinking. You buy them coffee. Morale's currency now, and caffeine's the new adrenaline. Even heroes need a jolt. You slip into a Pacific Fleet briefing. Map of the Solomons. No British overlays. Just a sticky note. Assume no reinforcement. You mutter, no reinforcement? That's when Japan lands on your beach. Without Churchill's fury or his faith in joint ops, the Pacific Wars become America's solo tour. With higher ticket prices and no encore, you check intercepted British memos. Halifax. Domestic opinion sensitive to Pacific commitments. You facepalm. Sensitive. The rising sun's not sensitive, it's rising. Over Singapore, over Burma, over British bones. But Halifax is optimizing messaging. Again, you whisper, history's burning, and he's drafting footnotes. You wander past a recruiting poster, join the fight, but the ink's faded. The queue? Empty. Recruiter naps under a palm tree. You peek at his ledger. Last enlistment, 4 months ago, you sigh. Wars run on volunteers or vengeance. Without inspiration, you get neither. Just sand. And silence and rising suns. You find a Marine's letter home. Dear Pop, don't worry. They say we're turning the tide. You clutch it. Tide? The only tide turning is Japanese. You glance at the horizon. No British carriers, no shared codes, just waves, and the occasional distant depth charge. American. Solo. Slower. You trail a British diplomat to a Honolulu hotel. He offers continued consultation. American Admiral smiles, sips bourbon. Consultation? Define it. The diplomat stammers. Some. You chuckle. Without Churchill's charisma or his cigars, diplomacy's just empty glasses and colder handshakes. And Nimitz? He's already redrawing the map. Without British pins, you end the night watching stars over the Coral Sea. No Churchillian cables crackling through wireless. No, we shall fight them on every ocean echoing in command rooms. Just waves and silence and the occasional distant sonar ping. You realize, without a voice that believes in unity, unity forgets you. And the Pacific, it's getting wider and deeper and redder. You're in San Francisco, April 1945. No Churchill means no Atlantic charter ghost haunting the peace talks. No Four Freedoms echoing in hallways. Just Halifax's memo, His Majesty's government supports multilateral consultation. You whisper, consultation? That's what you call a committee with no agenda? And the world? It's already drafting separate treaties. You trail a State Department aide through the UN founding conference. He mutters, without British moral authority, who defines peace? You nod. Churchill didn't just negotiate, he inspired. Without his never surrender growl, the post-war world's becoming a spreadsheet. And dictators? They're auditing the columns for loopholes. You eavesdrop on a Soviet delegate's cable. Molotov to Moscow. British position weak. Push for Eastern Bloc autonomy. You wince. Autonomy? That's polite for satellite state. Without Churchill's stubbornness and his late-night whiskey diplomacy, the Iron Curtain's not a metaphor. It's a delivery, signed, sealed, and already hanging. You visit a drafting room. No freedom from fear clauses, no British insistence on human rights preambles. Just a sticky note. Avoid ideological language. You snort. Ideological? In 1945, that's like avoiding gravity while skydiving. You buy them pencils. Morale's currency now, and idealism's out of stock. Even diplomats need erasers. You slip into a security briefing. Map of Europe? Red pins mark Soviet advances. No British counterproposals, just a memo. Acknowledge spheres of influence. You mutter, acknowledge? That's when you hand them the scissors without Churchill's fury, or his faith in democracy. The piece isn't just fragile, it's pre-sold. At a discount. You check intercepted British cables. Halifax. Domestic opinion favors rapid demobilization. You facepalm. Rapid? The Wehrmacht's ashes are still warm, but Halifax is optimizing public messaging. Again. You whisper, history's burning, and he's filing the smoke. Stalin's already framing the surrender documents, in red ink. You wander past a recruitment poster. Build the new world. But the ink's faded. The queue? Empty. Recruiter naps under a palm tree. You peek at his ledger. Last hire, 6 months ago. You sigh. Institutions run on vision or vacuum. Without inspiration, you get neither. Just silence. And Soviet tanks, rolling west. You find a delegate's letter home. Dear wife, don't worry. They say we're shaping the future. You clutch it. Shaping. The only thing being shaped is spheres of influence. You glance at the horizon. No British proposals for collective security. Just handshakes. And side deals. And the occasional distant tank tread. You trail a British diplomat to a cocktail reception. He offers continued cooperation. American ambassador smiles, sips bourbon. Cooperation? Define it. The diplomat stammers. You chuckle. Without Churchill's charisma, or his cigars, diplomacy's just empty glasses and colder handshakes. And Acheson? He's already drafting NATO. Without London's address. You end the night watching fog roll over the Golden Gate. No Churchillian cables crackling through wireless. No, we must build a world worthy of our dead, echoing in halls of power. Just mist, and silence, and the occasional distant ship horn. You realize, without a voice that believes in ideals, ideals forget you. And the post-war world? It's being drawn, without Britain's pen. You're in Berlin, August 1947. No Churchill means no Iron Curtain speech, no special relationship to anchor the West. Just Halifax's polite cable. His Majesty's government encourages mutual understanding. You whisper, understanding? That's what you call watching Stalin redraw Europe with a red crayon, and no one's left to say no. You trail a CIA officer through Checkpoint Charlie. He mutters, without British intel, we're flying blind in the East. You nod. Churchill didn't just warn, he connected. Without his sinews of peace growl, containments become guesswork. And Stalin? He's not guessing. He's governing. From Warsaw to Budapest to your backyard. You eavesdrop on a decoded Soviet cable. Beria to Moscow. British resistance negligible. Accelerate infiltration. You wince. Negligible? That's what you call a door left unlocked. But without Churchill's paranoia and his late-night memos screaming, "Red alert!" Britain's not a shield. It's a welcome mat. And Beria? He's wiping his boots. You visit a U.S. Embassy briefing room. Map of Europe. No British counterintelligence overlays, just a sticky note. Assume worst case. You snort. Worst case? That's when your embassy becomes a listening post for the other side. You buy them coffee. Morale's currency now, and caffeine's the new counterintelligence. Even spies need a jolt. You slip into a NATO planning session. No British delegates at the table, just a memo. Observe as non-voting participants. You mutter, non-voting? That's when you hand them the gavel. Without Churchill's fury or his faith in alliances, the West's not united, it's politely fractured. And Stalin? He's handing out the glue. For his side, you check intercepted British memos. Halifax. Domestic opinion favors détente. You facepalm. Détente? The Gulag's not taking tea breaks, but Halifax is optimizing public messaging. Again, you whisper, history's burning, and he's drafting invitations to Stalin's victory party. With British letterhead, you wander past a recruitment poster. Join the free world, but the ink's faded. The queue, empty. Recruiter naps under a lamppost. You peek at his ledger. Last hire, 8 months ago. You sigh. Movements run on conviction or complacency. Without inspiration, you get neither. Just silence. And Soviet parades. Louder every May Day. You find an agent's letter home. Dear Mom, don't worry. They say we're containing communism. You clutch it. Containing? The only thing being contained is Western resolve. You glance at the horizon. No British signals. No shared codes. Just barbed wire. And the occasional distant loudspeaker. Blaring Soviet anthems. In German, you trail a British diplomat to a Bonn reception. He offers continued dialogue. American general smiles, sips bourbon. Dialogue? Define it. The diplomat stammers. You chuckle. Without Churchill's charisma, or his cigars, diplomacy's just empty glasses and colder handshakes. And Dulles? He's already redrawing the Iron Curtain. Without British input, you end the night watching rainfall on the Reichstag. No Churchillian cables crackling through wireless. No, we must stand together echoing in ruined halls. Just drips and silence. And the occasional distant tank tread. You realize, without a voice that believes in resistance, resistance forgets you. And Europe? It's learning to bow. Eastward. You're in London, 1955. No Churchill means no defiant statue in Parliament Square. No cigar-chomping ghost haunting Whitehall. Just Halifax's polished bust in the Foreign Office and a plaque. Architect of pragmatic peace. You mutter, pragmatic? That's what you call surrender with better stationery and the pigeons? They've stopped saluting. You trail a schoolteacher through a history museum. She points at a faded map. This was the British Empire. Briefly, a child asks, why'd it shrink? She sighs. Because we chose comfort over courage. You nod. Without Churchill's roar, empires don't fall. They evaporate, like morning mist, leaving only damp pavement and regret. You eavesdrop on a pub debate. Was Halifax right? One shrugs. Saved lives, didn't he? You snort. Saved? More like postponed. Without Churchill's stubbornness and his refusal to treat dictators as diplomats, the 20th century didn't end in victory. It ended in shrugs and spreadsheets and very polite surrender ceremonies. You visit a bookstore. No their finest hour on shelves. No growling memoirs. Just Halifax's collected speeches. The virtue of restraint. You flip it open. Chapter 1. Knowing when to yield. You close it. Some books don't need sequels. They need apologies. And maybe a bulldog-shaped paperweight. You slip into a BC archive. No crackling wartime broadcasts. No, we shall fight them on the beaches. Just a recording. His Excellency Lord Halifax addresses the Rotary Club, 1951. You press play. And so, moderation remains our finest export. You sigh. Moderation? That's what you call defeat in a waistcoat. You check a university syllabus. Modern British history. The Age of Accommodation, 1940 to 1960. You wince. Accommodation? That's academic speak for we rolled over. Without Churchill's fury or his faith in impossible rescues, Britain's not a beacon. It's a cautionary footnote in someone else's textbook. You wander past a recruitment office. Join the Commonwealth Service! But the ink's faded. The queue? A single pensioner asking for directions. You peek at the ledger. Last enlistment, never. You sigh. Nations run on pride or pity. Without inspiration, you get neither, just silence, and very well-mannered decline. You find a grandfather's letter to his grandson. You wouldn't know him. But once, we had a man who believed you clutch it. Believed? In what? Victory? Defiance? Hope? You glance at the headlines. Britain signs neutrality pact with Moscow. You fold the letter gently. Childhood ends when your heroes become footnotes. You trail a tourist guide through Westminster. And here, Lord Halifax negotiated peace with dignity. American visitor mutters, "Dignity? Or defeat?" The guide smiles. "Semantics, dear," you chuckle. Without Churchill's charisma or his cigars, history's not written, it's edited. By committee, with red pens, and no spine. You end the night on the Thames embankment. No Churchillian echoes. No cigar smoke curling into fog. Just water. And silence. And the occasional distant foghorn. You realize, without a voice that believes in greatness, greatness forgets you. And Britain? It's become a museum. With very polite guards and no gift shop. The fog doesn't lift. It never does. Not in this world. Without Churchill's voice, history didn't just change course. It lost its compass. You thought leadership was about policy, about position, about polished speeches in quiet rooms. But you were wrong. Leadership is about tone, about timing, about refusing to let the darkness win. Even when the maps say you're surrounded, even when the memos say yield, even when the world whispers, it's over. You stand on the banks of a quieter Thames, watching barges drift under bridges named for kings who never had to choose between dignity and survival. You realize now, heroes aren't born in calm. They're forged in chaos. And without that one stubborn, cigar-chomping, growling force of will, chaos didn't just win. It moved in, unpacked, redecorated, and sent you a very polite eviction notice. Funny, isn't it? How one man's absence can hollow out an empire? How silence, when it replaces conviction, becomes the loudest sound of all. You came here looking for alternate history. You found something sadder, a world that forgot how to believe in itself. So here's my question for you, curled up in your corner of the timeline. Who's your Churchill? Not the man, the spirit. The voice that says no when everyone else is whispering maybe later. The stubborn flame that refuses to go out even in the wind. Because if you don't have one, maybe it's time to become one.